The ASUS ROG Zephyrus G14 is finally available to buy in Malaysia after its head-turning debut at CES 2020 earlier this year, thanks to its Enemy Matrix LED cover panel that lets you display GIFs, text and images. But is all the hype for this laptop justified, or are you buying it solely for the cool aesthetics? Well, we're here to find out. But before we start our video, here's a message from our sponsor for today, Vivo. The Vivo V19 has a gorgeous 6.44-inch Super AMOLED Ultra O display with dual front cameras which can snap night selfies with its 32-megapixel camera, or grab more in one shot with its super wide-angle selfie mode. It's also got an amazing 48-megapixel quad AI camera which has impressive night mode too. Plus the phone supports up to 33 watts of Vivo Flash Charge 2.0 to juice your phone in no time. Click the link in the description box below to get yourself a Vivo V19 at an affordable 1,699 ringgit. Our Zephyrus G14 is the top spec model and it's priced at 7,699 ringgit. It comes with a WQHD 1440p IPS panel that supports 100% sRGB range and is Pantone validated, so color accuracy is good. With this panel, I've had a blast watching YouTube, especially at 1440p resolution. But here's the catch. In Malaysia, this top spec variant with the RTX 2060 Max-Q is not available with a 120Hz 1080p display. It exists, but it's not here yet. It'll only arrive sometime this September. However, the 120Hz panel can be attained now only with the lower spec variants of the Zephyrus G14. Anyways, in terms of the laptop's design, it's got the distinct compact form factor of any ROG Zephyrus product. It's also light but sturdy. It weighs just 1.6 kilograms with its magnesium alloy chassis, lid and keyboard deck. All over the laptop boasts an anti-fingerprint finish from the palm rests to the lid. Speaking of which, on the cover you'll find the head-turning Enemy Matrix LED panel, which is the much talked about feature for this laptop. It's basically LED lights that shine through these CNC cutouts and it displays images basically. It needs to be done via Armoury Crate, and from there you can choose to put text, GIFs, an audio visualizer, or system info like time, date and battery level. This is useful because you can have them stay on even when the laptop is in sleep mode or when the lid is closed. My personal favorite to put on Enemy Matrix is this. The keyboard here is a mixed bag in that I find its snappiness and short travel easy to type on for long hours, but when it comes to gaming, it doesn't quite give me the control that I want. But maybe that's just me being used to using mechanical keyboards for so long. In terms of audio, you get two cutouts at the top and two vents at the bottom for the subwoofers, and I'm glad to report that the audio is punchy, crisp, and have decent depth. The speakers perform best at higher volumes, and thankfully it doesn't crackle when set to maximum. For I/O ports, you get two USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C ports, one of which supports DisplayPort 1.4 and power delivery. You also get two USB 3.2 Type-A ports, one HDMI 2.0B port, and a headphone jack. Now let's get into the hardware. This laptop runs on an AMD Ryzen 9 4900HS, which is the more power efficient version of the 4900H. For graphics, the best you can get is an Nvidia RTX 2060 Max-Q, which actually debuts on this laptop. It comes with 16GB of DDR4 3200MHz RAM, and you can pack this laptop with up to 32GB of memory. But it needs to be noted that one of your 8GB sticks is soldered onto the motherboard. For storage, you get an Intel 660p 1TB NVMe SSD, which is not a premium drive, but in real-world usage terms, it works fine. We ran Shadow of the Tomb Raider first at 1080p, and you can get a steady 60 frames per second with ray tracing off. Do the same thing, but at 1440p, you're looking at an average of about 53 frames per second. With RTX Shadows at Ultra on 1080p, you get about 42 frames per second and low 30s at 1440p. We then ran the Final Fantasy XV benchmark tool. It scored high at 1080p at ultra settings, and then at 1440p it scored about standard, medium, and lastly at 4K with ray tracing on and all the Nvidia settings enabled, it scored very low, which is pretty much expected. Next, we ran Doom Eternal on Ultra. This game scales really well, and unsurprisingly, the Zephyrus G14 runs this game at maximum FPS at both 1080p and 1440p resolutions. The RTX 2060 Max-Q didn't have enough memory to run the game at Nightmare or Nightmare Ultra graphics settings, but regular Ultra looks super good anyways, and it offered consistent FPS through and through even in the heat of battle. Our last game on the list is Battlefield 5 at Ultra, and we're looking at 60 frames per second at 1080p with no ray tracing turned on, and about 49 to low 50s at 1440p. With ray tracing turned on and DLSS 2, we get about low 40s without dropping to 30s at 1080p, but at 1440p it's borderline unplayable at low 30s with occasional dips to high 20s. Just tweak around a little bit, you don't have to play this game at ultra settings, and you should be able to find a really good sweet spot. For synthetic benchmarks, I also ran 3DMark's TimeSpy and got a score of 59.96. I ran Blender using the BMW and Classroom scenes, and my results were 3 minutes and 34 seconds and 11 minutes and 34 seconds respectively.
Now the CPU and GPU on this laptop are the power efficient variants of their respective product lineups, and the dip in performance is there to see. I'm comparing it to the ASUS TUF Gaming A15, which I recently reviewed. That came with an NVIDIA RTX 2060, the regular version, and the Ryzen 7 4800H. And when it comes to 1080p gaming benchmarks, the ASUS TUF Gaming scored about 10 frames per second extra compared to the Zephyrus G14, and that is taking into consideration that this is only a 60Hz panel, so some adjustments were made in that comparison. But still, with the higher clocked hardware, the TUF Gaming A15 performed slightly better than this while costing a lot less. And when it comes to synthetic benchmarks too, the TUF Gaming A15 also performed better there.
But all that power efficiency has paid off. The Zephyrus G14 lasts about 8 hours with regular productivity work and media consumption, and you're looking at about 6 hours with some minor photo editing too. All this is made capable by a 76 Wh battery that you can charge with a 180 watt adapter or a 65 watt power delivery USB-C brick, which also comes in the box. So it being lighter is meant to be used on the go. Let's quickly jump into thermals before we wrap things up. After some heavy gaming, the CPU records a max temperature of about 98 degrees Celsius and an average temp of about 85 degrees Celsius. The GPU had a max temp of about 86 with an average of around high 70s. The WASD palm rest gets somewhat warm after a while, and at turbo settings the fan is fairly loud too, but these are issues that are not really deal breakers for me. For my verdict, an ASUS ROG Zephyrus has to always be a gaming laptop first and foremost. With the lack of a 120Hz monitor, it takes away from what the hardware can really achieve and what gamers really want, which are high frame rates. For those who want that and more value, I'd say go for the ASUS TUF Gaming A15, which is slightly more powerful and has more room for upgrades in storage and RAM, and it also costs a lot less at 5,899 ringgit.
With that said, the ROG Zephyrus G14 really breaks the mold when it comes to aesthetics thanks to its enemy matrix LED cover panel, and to be fair, it doesn't perform poorly either. It's actually quite a beast gaming laptop, and I would recommend this for anyone who also does a little bit of creative work, as it has a really fantastic display with pretty good color accuracy. And it's also light enough to be carried around for anyone who's constantly on the go, which the ASUS TUF Gaming A15 is not. So if you want something really fancy, something that stands out, go for the Zephyrus G14. If you want something more practical with more legroom for upgrades and better value, go for the TUF Gaming A15. Well, let us know down in the comments below which would you go for, the G15 TUF, or would you wait for the 120Hz version of this laptop? Give us a like, remember to subscribe. This is Victor signing off. Bye bye.